Hi from Dubai. Today we'll be talking about stock-to-flow model and why I'm considered bullshit. I will give you several reasons why it defies the basic logic. See you after the break. Hi again after the break. What is a stock-to-flow model in Bitcoin? Stock-to-flow describes the relationship between the supply of new bitcoins, the stock of old bitcoins, and the price of the bitcoin. And it generally says that the price of bitcoin is proportional to the stock to flow ratio, meaning the ratio of the bitcoins in existence to the bitcoins, to the newly created bitcoins. And it generally says the higher the stock to flow ratio, the more is the value of the good, and especially in this case of Bitcoin. And it says since the stock to flow ratio of silver is much lower than the stock to flow ratio of gold, where gold is around 50, this means that the value of gold is much higher than the value of silver. And stock to flow ratio generally is the reciprocal to the inflation rate. So if you have an inflation rate of 2%, like in gold more or less, then you have a stock to flow ratio of 50. If you have an inflation rate of 1%, then you have the stock to flow ratio of 100. If you have an inflation of 10%, then the stock to flow ratio is 10. So it sounds at first glance logical to say the less inflation you have in a good, the higher the value of that good. But it's not really logical. I will give you an example. Right now, we have 6.25 bitcoins every 10 minutes being created. And it will be the case till, I guess, 2024, till spring of 2024. So we will have 6.25 bitcoins every 10 minutes, means generally 37.5 bitcoins every hour. I have some computation, I have made some computation, so I will read it. That means 328,500 bitcoins a year. Then on average every month you have 27,375 bitcoins a month. And we have around 18,950,000 in existence. When you are watching it, maybe we have 19 million already. So we have, let's say, 19 million Bitcoin in existence. And if you divide that creation of 328,500 Bitcoin a year divided by 19, then we have an inflation in Bitcoin of 1.73% this year, and it is probably a little bit lower than the inflation of gold. And stock to flow ratio is 1 divided by that inflation, or we can divide just another way around, 19 million through the in existence through the number of bitcoins created. Then we have a stock to flow ratio of 57.8. So we assume a stock to flow ratio of gold is around 50. Then we have a higher stock to flow ratio of Bitcoin right now, and that means Bitcoin should be more valuable than gold right now. And after 2024 it will once again double the stock to flow ratio and so on. So the value of Bitcoin is somehow proportional to its stock to flow ratio, and it will go up with time. But if we assume this is right, that the stock-to-flow ratio decides about the value of Bitcoin. So let's assume we have two realities. The first reality that we have now, where we have a Bitcoin where there is 19 million of Bitcoins in existence, and there are 6.25 Bitcoins being created every 10 minutes. Then we have a stock-to-flow of 57.8, right? But then we have another reality B, let's say, where we have a Bitcoin also with 6.25 Bitcoins created every 10 minutes. But we have double the amount of Bitcoin in existence. It would mean 38 million Bitcoins in existence. And, apparently it's like, the asymptotic value of all Bitcoins will be not 21, but 42. But now let's compare the stock-to-flows of these two Bitcoins. In reality A, we have a stock-to-flow of 57.8, and in reality B, we have generally double the number of stock-to-flow, so around 107 stock-to-flow. So double the value of stock-to-flow of the Bitcoin in reality A. So the stock-to-flow model would say, of course, this Bitcoin in reality B is much more valuable. But how is it possible that a Bitcoin with much more units in existence and the same inflation and this same number, the same production of new Bitcoins would be more valuable? It doesn't make an economic sense. It defies the law of scarcity and the law of demand and supply. Because if we have double the supply, if we have just twice as much of a good, of the same good, it can't be more valuable. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make an economic sense. So this is the first example that I can give you why, or first example for that reason. So let's go to another example. The second example for that, defying the law of scarcity. We have cryptocurrencies with zero inflation. All the tokens, all the units of that cryptocurrency were minted, were created at the beginning, and there is no new supply in these tokens. What is the stock-to-flow of that currency? If you divide 100 million or whatever by zero, you generally get infinity. The stock-to-flow would be infinity. It means the value of that cryptocurrency would be infinite. It would be limitless, and it would be for sure much higher than the value of Bitcoin because of stock-to-flow being finite in comparison to infinite, right? So, but I mean, this is what the stock-to-flow model would predict. Also, let's take the land in the world, right? There is no new land being created in the world. All the land is divided up, all the land is there, and there is no inflation in the land that you have in the world. So stock-to-flow would be infinite as well. So the value of the land is infinite following the stock-to-flow model, and it would be much higher than Bitcoin, much higher. So how is it possible that I can buy land with Bitcoin? I mean, it would be just another leak, right? It's again doesn't make sense. Infinite value of land, of tokens, and by the way, the cryptocurrencies that with no inflation that are on the market, and maybe you can share the examples of the cryptocurrencies that are created and the value doesn't change. Maybe you can share these cryptocurrencies examples in the comments. And let's come to the third example. And the third example is they are also deflationary cryptocurrencies, meaning the number of tokens, they were created, all the units, all the numbers in existence, all the tokens in existence were created at the beginning, and then they are being burned as time progresses. And the examples are Binance Coin is an example of such a coin where the number of units decreases with time. And we also have at times also Ethereum being deflationary, meaning more units are being destroyed or more units are being burnt than they are new units created. And this means that the stock-to-flow ratio is negative. What does it mean, negative stock-to-flow ratio? It would mean there is a negative value, or what would it mean? By if you take it generally, the higher the stock-to-flow ratio, the better. So it would mean a negative value of Binance Coin, or I don't see the sense here of stock-to-flow ratio. So maybe the creators of stock-to-flow model would explain how this would apply to goods like Binance Coin or Ethereum. So we have three examples, three major, so to say, examples, and one is directly applying to Bitcoin. The first one that show that stock-to-flow ratio and the stock-to-flow model generally defies logic and basic laws of economy. And of course, the second main reason why stock-to-flow ratio is bullshit is because it doesn't take demand under consideration. So it shows only the supply side of a price of a value equation, but it doesn't show anything about demand. And if you have, let's say, as an example, zero demand for a good, then in the ratio, in the equation of the value, which says it's just the relationship generally, or the relationship between supply and demand. So the relationship between supply and demand creates the value and the price of the good. So if you have zero demand for a good, its value, its price is generally zero, because nobody trades it, nobody buys it, nobody wants to have it. Then you have a zero, the price of $0. Okay, let's say again, let's go with Bitcoin example. We have two realities. The first reality where we have Bitcoin with a demand as we have in our world, and it has a price, let's say, of $30,000 a piece. And then we have another reality B, where it says the stock to flow of that Bitcoin is twice as high. Let's say the production is just the half of the production of Bitcoin right now, but there is no demand for this Bitcoin. Nobody buys this Bitcoin. The stock-to-flow model would say the Bitcoin reality B is much more expensive, much more valuable, because the stock-to-flow ratio is much higher. But it's just bullshit. If there is no demand, the value is zero. So if nobody would be buying Bitcoin, if nobody would be wanting to buy Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin would be zero. The second example for that reason, we have high inflation, meaning high supply of new tokens following the stock-to-flow model, right? High supply of new tokens, meaning low stock-to-flow ratio, but we have, on the other hand, even a higher demand than the supply. So much more tokens are being bought than the production of the tokens, then we have an increasing price despite the stock-to-flow model saying this should be a low price. On the other hand, if we have a very low inflation, meaning a high stock-to-flow ratio, but we have even a lower demand, so let's say very few tokens, very few bitcoins are being created, and only some of them are being bought and the rest of them are not being bought, then we have a low price despite the stock-to-flow model predicting a high price due to high stock-to-flow ratio. So we see the two main reasons why stock-to-flow ratio, as it is described, as it is computed, is bullshit. And in the next video, I will present you a better approach to modeling the value and the price of Bitcoin. Stay with me. Subscribe if you haven't. If you want to not to miss the next video where I explain it. Give me a thumb up if you like this video. Of course, thumb down if you haven't. I talk here a lot about cryptocurrencies. I talk about economy, about money. I talk about how the best entrepreneurs, the billionaires of our times, think and act. I talk here how to do great, big, impossible things in your life and business. So if you like this video, share this video with your friends and your loved ones. One day they will thank you for that. That's it from Dubai. I wish you a fantastic day. Let's do something extraordinary today.